From the 1011 Now streaming studio in Lincoln, Nebraska, this is the End Report Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store.
Hi, everyone. Bill Rentschler in the 1011 Now streaming studio, coming to you live for another edition of the End Report Husker Show, joined by sports director Kevin Suits, who is live right now in a very cold Iowa City, Iowa, as the Huskers fall to the Hawkeyes 13-10. Kevin, another game-ending field goal sends the Huskers home with a loss, but this year they are 6-6 and still have bowl eligibility.
I like how you snuck that in there, Bill, because you're trying to give the positive on a day where a lot of people probably don't want to hear it right now. Nebraska loses to Iowa on a walk-off field goal, 13-10 final score. This is a game that the Huskers led by double digits at halftime, and Nebraska even had the ball in a tie game in the closing minute. But a Dylan Raiola fumble led to an Iowa recovery, and a few plays later, it was a 52-yard field goal that sent this place into a frenzy. So the second straight year Nebraska loses on a field goal as time expires, and this is the fourth time over the past, I believe, 8 years, maybe 9, that Nebraska has lost on a field goal at the very end.
Kevin, it's, even more heartbreaking. You look at the numbers. Nebraska has 20 first downs to Iowa's 5, 334 yards to Iowa's 164, held them to less than 50 yards rushing on the ground, 0 for 10 on third down. There was really no reason Nebraska probably should have lost this game, but they did.
It's an absolute head-scratcher. Apparently, that's the new blueprint. Get 5 first downs, win a football game. I would be shocked to know if that's happened over the past 20, 25 years in college football. And, you mentioned some of those numbers and how far they lean in favor of Nebraska. Keep this in mind, too. Caleb Johnson, for the first time this season, did not have a rushing touchdown. So if anybody making the drive from Nebraska to Iowa would have heard all of those stats, all of those numbers, you would have thought that the Huskers would win this game by 2 scores, maybe 3. By no means would you ever expect this game to go down to the wire and for Nebraska to lose.
Kevin, Matt Rule said in his post-game, we just have to make the plays, and I think everyone's looking at, it was 2nd and 1, Isaiah Nayor is open on a crossing route, and it just goes right through his hands. And that drive ends up fizzling out, and then the game ends how it ends. Nebraska's consistently been, in some of these close losses, just 1 or 2 plays away from turning that game.
Yeah, it's interesting. You single out the Nayor dropped pass. Yes, that's an important one. Raiola's fumble, because if he doesn't fumble the football, Nebraska, at worst-case scenario, just runs the clock out and goes to overtime. So the Raiola fumble with 26 seconds is an important one. And also, when Nebraska muffed the punt at its own 4-yard line, or that's at least where Iowa recovered, that was a huge play. It was in the third quarter, and even though Nebraska had a nice defensive stand right there on the goal line, it still allowed the Hawkeyes to get points. And it energized this crowd because prior to that, Bill, Iowa, I believe, had only 2 first downs in the entire game. In the first half, the Hawkeyes had just 20 yards of total offense. So this crowd, it wasn't just because it was cold that they were quiet. It's because the home team wasn't playing very well. So I think even the muffed punt, if you're to look at 3 key pivotal plays in this game, the muffed punt, the drop by Nayor, and the fumble by Raiola, those are probably the 3 that are going to be pretty tough to look on the film review tomorrow for the Huskers.
And it really is unfortunate, again, for players like Ty Robinson, Nash Hutmacher, Isaac Gifford, because the defense, they did what they needed to do. They played a really, really good game. Again, there was the one, play where Caleb Johnson breaks it. But, he's a big back. He's one of the best backs in the Big Ten. You're hardly going to keep a guy like him contained the whole game, but they played aces today.
Absolutely. Ty Robinson played insanely well. And from the very beginning, Ty Robinson had a tackle on Caleb Johnson on just like a off tackle going to the right. Robinson met him in the backfield and dropped him, and he kind of laid on top for a few extra seconds, and he was running his mouth a little bit. And Ty, I think, was maybe telling him, you better get used to me because I'm going to be with you all game long. And he was. And Ty Robinson might have made himself some pretty good NFL money today. Not that scouts needed another game of an example that this guy can play at the next level. He played insanely well. Nebraska's defensive front did a really nice job just plugging holes. They knew that Iowa was going to run the football, and it didn't stop them from, just shooting the gaps, getting off of blocks, making tackles. You mentioned the one play where Johnson did shake about 5, 6, 7 tackles, and then he made a nice move in the open field. But outside of that one play, and if you think about this, I know you have the numbers in front of you. What did Iowa finish with in total offense, Bill? 177?
Yeah, they were close to that, Kevin. They were under 200 yards. It was 164. 164 to 334.
Okay, 164. 72 yards for Iowa came on one play. So if you remove the play in which Johnson broke all those tackles and had the touchdown, the lone touchdown for the Hawkeyes in the game, they were held under 100 yards of total offense.
It was an impressive effort by the Black Shirts for sure. But, Kevin, rounding back to where I kind of started this, if this was this last year. Last year, the Huskers needed a win against Iowa to go bowling. This year, they have the 6th win in their pocket. So there is still football left to be played for Matt Rule and his squad. I think I can guarantee you that wherever you will be, Kevin, in several weeks, it will be warmer than where you are right now. But still a lot to look forward to for this squad. Again, finishing the season 6-6, but they still get some extra practices and they get one more game.
So you're saying there are no bowl games in Antarctica? Because that's kind of what it feels like here. Yeah, it will be a warmer venue or a warmer climate than Iowa City here in late November. It looks right now that Nebraska, the possible and more likely destinations, the Music City Bowl in Nashville seems to be a popular choice. The Pinstripe Bowl in New York City is a possibility. I don't know that that's necessarily going to happen. The Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte. Had Nebraska won this game, there was a lot of momentum and a lot of chatter that the Huskers could have possibly slipped into the ReliaQuest Bowl, which is in Tampa. That's on January 1st. It sounds like that could likely be the destination for Iowa, the winner of this game. And the Hawkeyes closed the regular season with 8 wins. Pretty decent record for Kirk Ferentz's team this year. So the bowl destinations likely will not get announced until a week from Sunday. And, if you're wanting to really start browsing flights and make travel plans, I think Nashville, Charlotte, those are probably 2 of the better odds for Nebraska to go to for the postseason.
Well, Kevin, I'm cold just looking at you right now, but any final thoughts, again, on this game, on this regular season, on this squad before we let you go?
It's a tough one. Nebraska, they got the monkey off the back last week of breaking through, getting the 6th win, clinching bowl eligibility for the first time since 2016. There still exists a monkey on the Huskers' back, and that's winning a close game. Matt Rule in games that are coming down to the wire, he hasn't had the most success, and you shouldn't just leave it to the Matt Rule era. You can think about the previous coaches, Scott Frost, inability to close games, inability to win games that go down to the wire, and then even at the end of the Mike Riley era as well. So that's, I guess, the next demon to exercise for Nebraska, trying to finish a close game because, it was a 10-point difference. Nebraska ends up letting that slip away, and they lose by 3 on a walk-off field goal. And I think maybe some Nebraska fans got a little bit uneasy when the game was tied after the long Johnson touchdown reception, and then when Iowa got the football back at the very end. I'm sure I can just picture some gentleman in his easy chair who wasn't able to sit for those final seconds. He was probably pacing around the living room and fearing the worst because Nebraska fans have seen this time and time again, finding a way to lose, not win, when the game is on the line at the very end.
Yeah, there was a lot of us, myself included, who were sitting up in their chairs as opposed to leaning back once that fumble happened with Raiola. But there's always next year. So we'll continue to look forward to, again, obviously our bowl game and then next year as well. Kevin, please go inside, warm up, get all the hand warmers.
Bill, Well, you wanted to know about the game. I will give you a little bit about the atmosphere. There was a pretty decent showing of Nebraska fans. It wasn't sold out. It was a blackout. It's hard to call it a blackout because, not everybody has a black winter coat. So it's a smattering of colors. And there was a decent amount of red here as well. And for anybody wondering, wearing gloves, stocking cap. There are hand warmers in the pockets. I have 5 layers on my top, and I'm still freezing cold. 3 socks, too, by the way. And it was a frigid night, but I got to get, a few Nebraska players came out for warm-ups, and they had no shirt on. They were just going bare-chested through a pregame routine. Yeah, they're much tougher than I, let's say that.
NBC had thrown up a graphic, Kevin, that it was one of the coldest, top 5 coldest games at Kinnick dating back to 2000. And I think the coldest was maybe 18, and I know you guys were close to that tonight.
Okay, what was the kickoff temperature, do you know? You're a weather guy. Was it 19, 20?
I am not 100% sure off the top of my head, other than cold. That's what the kickoff temperature was.
It was cold, and it's funny that you mentioned that NBC had that graphic, coldest games, because I guarantee you 2012 had to be on that list because that is the coldest football game I've ever covered in 21 years of covering Nebraska football. And I remember it was at halftime of that game, and I was in that end zone. And at halftime, I refused to even go inside because it hurt to move. Today, it wasn't that cold, but it was cold.
So, yeah, in a span of just like 6 weeks, Kevin, I think you've gone from one of the hottest Husker home games. We had that day in October when it was, in the mid to upper 90s to now one of the coldest Husker home games. You're getting thrown all over the place.
Yeah, there was also a trip out to L.A. in there, and that wasn't so bad after all.
All right, Kevin, well, we appreciate your time as always. Again, go inside, go get warmed up. Appreciate all of your coverage. It's fantastic as always, and we'll see you when you get back into Lincoln.
I have a cup of hot chocolate waiting for me, okay, Bill?
All right. Appreciate you, Kevin. Again, as always, appreciate everyone for tuning in and watching again. As always, again, unfortunately, another Husker loss. Huskers fall 13-10 to Iowa on a game-ending field goal. Again, but Huskers are 6-6, so they will be going bowling. We'll still have, again, more Husker coverage coming up here over the next several weeks as we figure out where the Huskers are going to go bowling and then, all the bowl practices and all the rest of it. So appreciate everyone for tuning in and watching. As always, keep it tuned to 1011, both on air and online, for all of your latest Husker coverage. Until next time, hope everyone has a nice Friday night.
You've been listening to the End Report Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store. Watch, listen, and stream on the 1011 Now app, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more Husker coverage throughout the week, watch The End Report on 1011 Sports at 6 and 10 p.m. and download the 1011 Now app.